Hey guys. Alright, let's try that again. For those of you who haven't seen my recent announcement on Facebook, I've decided to slow down how many gaming videos I upload specifically to spend more time focusing on my short moves, my short story audiobooks. Since I'm doing everything by myself all the while balancing a full-time job, I'm noticing that it's becoming harder and harder to upload every week while still being able to write. So, I have decided to upload a video from a different category once or twice a month. Hope you all can understand, and I thank you for your continued support. Hello and welcome back to the Moocast. Today I'm joined by John, whom you might recognize from my latest short story, The Call, as Giulio Bonello, the crackhead gangster.
Hello.
And Patrick.
Hello.
So just to give a short background, we're not any experts on Star Wars lore or anything. We're just three guys that really love Star Wars and are super excited for the Mandalorian Season 2 finale.
Woot woot.
So that being said, what did you guys think?
I think it was great fan service.
Oh yes, yeah.
It was more than anything I expected. So I kind of held back in terms, even when they were showing like the whole, I guess, spoiler, like walking through the cameras at the very end.
Yeah.
Like walk through, it's like, oh look, after what Kara said, like, oh great, one X-wing, like we're saying,
yeah.
right?
I wonder who could be in that X-wing.
I was holding everything back. I was just like, I had like blank slate, not expecting anything, right?
Yeah.
They were viewing him through the cameras. I was like, no, they can't. No, like I didn't really believe it until like the end, right?
Right.
I was literally just holding out because I was like, come on, man.
Oh man, yeah, I got chills when I saw Luke like just wreaking havoc in that corridor. It had like very strong Darth Vader vibes from that last scene in Rogue One. But for some reason, like it didn't hit as hard as the Darth Vader scene. Like the Darth Vader scene was brutal. The man was killing rebels left and right without even looking at them. And I think it's just the organic nature versus him just shredding droids. It wasn't exactly the same. But we got to see a lot of crazy things when Luke was just going through that corridor, because he was using techniques that Jedi weren't actually supposed to use. Like things like Force Crush was actually looked down upon because it was considered the dark side of the Force. Only two people have ever actually used Force Crush, and it was Mace Windu against General Grievous. This is from the animated Clone Wars movie, and there was Anakin who used it on the Techno Union guy. According to that universe, that was why General Grievous had that huge coughing fit every time he's on screen. It's because Mace Windu crushed his chest.
Okay. Is this extended universe stuff, or?
I think it's still canon because it was considered. Because back then it was the Clone Wars animated movie, and if the Clone Wars were canon, then I think that should still be canon. I think, let me just double check. 2003 Clone Wars. I think they wrote
it into canon.
Yeah, from my end, I get what you're saying.
No, Darth it's Vader. Declared non-canonical, but...
Okay,
yeah.
It was part of the extended universe that they trashed when they had the acquisition, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, wait, no. Although elements of the series have since been referenced in canonical works. Okay. It's so complicated. All right, we'll just say for the sake of what we're talking about here is canon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. At the end of Rogue One, the Darth Vader scene was awesome. I think it was really just the brutality, the violence, the anger that Vader was exuding, just going through that corridor and taking down the troopers. For the end of Mandalorian, I do agree with John. I went in not reading any of the feeds online, going in as a blank slate. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea what to expect. And I'm not sure how I feel about Luke being there at the end, but I think they did the execution extremely well. Just that lone X-Wing coming in, then you see the hooded figure coming in through, destroying the droids. Then you see the green lightsaber, and then you see the gloved hand. And it's just that build-up. They don't say it's Luke, but just every little thing, any fan watching it, just those little tiny clues dropping was really well executed, even before he pulls back his hood. And that build-up, I think, does pay off. I don't know that him being there pays off necessarily, and I still have mixed feelings about it, but the way they slowly built it up was pretty awesome.
Oh, right. Especially when all the Dark Troopers seem to have sensed him coming and just turn around and just brace themselves, getting ready for what's going to come through that elevator. Yeah, I totally agree. Let's keep going on that topic that you brought up. How come you don't necessarily like Luke showing up?
Well, I'm not against Luke showing up. A bit like John said, I think it was more. I don't know if it was for fan service, or I'm not sure to what degree it does serve the story. I think where I'm having a bit more trepidations about it is that I feel as if they've had too many characters from not from the extended universe, but from other series.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the fact that you had Bo-Katan, then you had Ahsoka, then you had Django, and then you had Luke. I feel as if it made the universe a bit smaller. It's supposed to be a galaxy far, far away.
Mm-hmm.
The galaxy is supposed to be sprawling. And the fact that they had all these characters all in season 2 in succession, as I said, just made that galaxy just that much smaller. I'd understand if it was like in a city and people cross and everything. But the fact that it's supposed to be a sprawling galaxy and that every character we've seen in every series are there almost, in very close succession, just kind of, narrows down the scope of things.
Right. But the way the story was going, a Jedi was going to show up no matter what. And there were not many left. So it's not like they had a whole roster to choose from. But at the same time, this is their opportunity to potentially introduce a new character and start something of their own. I kind of agree with what you said. Like, they kind of shoehorned in a lot of characters that we know and love from other series and in the universe, right? And it did seem kind of a bit overwhelming because they tried to do so much that Ahsoka didn't really feel like Ahsoka. Like, like, I get it. She's supposed to grow up. She's a bit more mature now, but it just kind of seems like they forced her lines and she didn't really do much. She's like, even if you mature, you don't lose your personality inside. I mean, I guess she would because she might be all depressed from like Vader and everything, but she didn't look too, I don't know.
Yeah. I felt the same.
Jaded.
I did feel the same way, but playing devil's advocate, it's been a while since we've seen Ahsoka. I think last time we saw her was in Rebels.
Yes.
And I think after that, like where the Mandalorian is taking place is sometime after. I didn't really look for the timeline. So I guess a person can change during that time and they didn't give her much screen time either. So maybe they didn't have enough time to develop her. But I did have the same feeling as you. It didn't really feel as Ahsoka to me.
It didn't help that their only lines was just talking to Grogu through her mind and feelings, I guess. Mm-hmm. Although I was very happy with how she was taking down those people. I forgot what planet they were on. But she was just killing people like within the mist. You could see the flash of her white sabers and then show up on the wall and just completely wrecking everyone. That was cool. That was Ahsoka. But I feel like her few talking lines could have been implemented a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like each of the characters were represented really well throughout the series. It's just the only problem I felt was, like they did try to throw a lot of things to see what would stick almost, but like they just like threw characters that we all recognized.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Every episode they just like threw somebody else. I mean, I was happy where they had like at the very onset they had a teaser for Boba Fett, right?
Yeah.
And then slowly worked him into the story. So that's why I appreciated that. I appreciated Boba coming back, and then with Fennec, Ming-Na Wen's character, like bringing them back in because she was there in season 1.
Yeah.
So we're used to it, and then having those kind of slowly come in, I thought it was great. But then when they started then introducing Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, like it was literally, I felt like it was 100% fan service. It was just, they could have served the story a little better, I think, through different means. Mm-hmm. But afterwards, where you hear with that investors call, where they're coming out with so many lines now.
Yeah.
I felt like then it makes sense. But at the same time, you feel like, oh my gosh, Disney's just throwing everything against the wall just so they can fit more characters in. Right. So to me, it was fan service 100%. Like I'm sure, like when I saw these characters come out, I was like, "Whoa, this is great!" But then when you sit back, you're like, "Well, they only were here for one episode."
Yeah.
So like it was more like a cameo.
Yeah.
Right. So it felt a little like downplayed. Where I was like, "Oh man, like I want to see more." Like maybe if the season was longer, such like the animated series, maybe like 20 episodes or something like that, where they introduced these characters and gave them a few more episodes, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
But because the way that the Mandalorian set up. What is it, like 6 episodes a series?
8?
8? Yeah, like I feel like they threw too many characters in one series, and it felt like they just kind of get lost.
Yeah, you're right. They did naturally bring in Boba, which is the natural course of things for the story, right? But they didn't do much for Ahsoka. I actually wanted Ahsoka to appear a bit more in the throughout the series, and I was hoping that she would be the one to train Grogu. Like, I want to see the Padawan take up the role as master and train someone else. I still don't really understand why she turned down training Grogu, which is kind of ridiculous to me, but I'm still happy that Luke showed up in the end.
Yeah, for that point, for Ahsoka turning down Grogu, I think I'm with you. I think I would have liked it being Ahsoka and not Luke training Grogu.
Yeah.
But I do understand her, because basically, if you look at her own master, Anakin, he was adopted into Jedi training pretty late in his age, right?
Yeah.
And he ended up, becoming Vader.
Yeah.
Turning to the dark side and everything. So I think that was her, or that's how I understood when I was watching the series, why she turned him down on that offer.
There's a difference. Like, Grogu has already been training with the Academy, as they've already said. And according to some math, apparently at this point, Grogu is about 50 years old, like real time. But because their species grows a bit slower, he has the mindset of a 9-year-old or something. Technically, age shouldn't be an issue. So I don't really understand.
Yeah, but it's not just age. Grogu did go through some pretty bad spots we saw in season 1. And according to season 1 before that, I mean, he was captured, he was experimented on, he was, they were taking his blood for I don't know what reason.
Yeah.
And he's been following what's his name? The Mandalorian?
His name is Din.
Din, yeah, he's been following Din, and Din, he's not an unscrupulous character either.
Oh yeah, a bounty hunter is not exactly a good role model.
Yeah, and he's been seeing some pretty dark things. Just the fact that when he sees actions coming up, he would close his shell means that he was exposed to quite a bit.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, at the same time, I think Ahsoka she doesn't consider herself a Jedi either, right? So she left the Order. And she never completed, if I remember correctly, she never completed her Jedi training, and she's never really a Jedi Master or anything. She was a Padawan of Anakin.
She became a knight. She got knighted by what's-his-face, Anakin, on the cruiser before they separated, near the finale of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, but if I believe in Rebels, she did say she left the Order. Like, she doesn't consider herself...
Oh, yeah. He only recruited her back for that one mission. She wasn't... Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I think maybe even part of that, she feels like she doesn't... Like, maybe that's one of her hesitations, perhaps, for training, because she doesn't feel like she's part of that Order, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's why it would have been perfect for her to take him over.
Start her own Order.
Yeah, that's it. She has her own way of seeing things, and maybe jaded is not the word, but I'm not sure that it's appropriate for Grogu to be trained in the proper way of the Jedi, and that's why I think Ahsoka would have been a good mentor for him.
The thing is, Luke wouldn't do that either. He was trained by everyone, and now he's pretty much the only authority now for how the new Jedi Order is going to be running. And as you can see from that corridor, he's been using both sides of the Force. He's been using Force Crush, Force Slow, Force Speed. He uses the whole spectrum, right? Grey Jedi, exactly. So it wouldn't be a bad thing for him to be trained by Luke either. It's just that I would have appreciated more emphasis on other characters, because realistically, we're not going to have Mark Hamill for forever, and they had to CGI him just to make him younger, right? I was actually low-key expecting Kanan to show up, but I know he's dead, and he's probably only going to show up in the temples. But I thought he was going to show up where Grogu was meditating, because technically it's Force concentrated.
That would have been really interesting if Kanan came in.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
It would have been nice to see a yellow saber on the screen too, and then be like, "Oh, I can't train you either. I'm technically dead." And then, but he could at least show up long enough to kill off all the dark troopers that were coming to kidnap Grogu and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just to go back, of all the characters we mentioned, I know Django, they were hinting at him for a while, but the character that bothered me the least was actually Bo-Katan.
Oh, why?
Yeah, and it's because at the end of season 1, you see Moff Gideon come out of his TIE fighter with the dark saber.
Yes.
And I'm not remembering really well, but I think at the end, Bo-Katan did get the dark saber from Sabine Wren, right?
Yes,
to
yes.
lead the Mandalorians, and that happened before.
Yes.
I mean, to lead Mandalorian. This was before the Mandalorian.
Right.
So the fact that she was not in possession of the dark saber and he had it, and assuming that she was still alive, it made sense that they would introduce her and that she would probably continue in season 3.
Right. So I thought you were going to bring up another controversial topic, and it's that it makes no sense that Bo-Katan couldn't take the darksaber from Din, because she didn't win it by trial either. Back in the Clone Wars, in fact, Sabine just willingly gave it to her. I mean, you can argue that at the time, Darth Maul was in control of Mandalore, right? And then he fought Palpatine and lost. So technically Palpatine is the owner of the darksaber, but then Palpatine then doesn't care. He just kind of like, I don't know how he lost it again, but that means technically the darksaber didn't have an owner, which means that it was okay for Sabine to just give it to Bo-Katan. But yeah, all of this doesn't make sense. Bo-Katan was clearly okay with taking it from Sabine before, but now is suddenly not okay from taking it from Din. Yeah, what do you think?
I think part of that is what Moff Gideon said, right? It's the story behind it. So I think at the same time, it's the people who witness the transfer, right? Because in those other transfers, I don't remember exactly, like when Sabine gave Bo-Katan the saber.
That was in front of everyone.
Opposition, right? Because Moff Gideon's there personally. You don't, at that point in time, you don't know if Moff Gideon's going to survive or not. If she just took it and Moff Gideon escaped, then the story, there's two variations to the story, right?
But it's very simple. You kill him.
Well, yeah, but you don't know at that point in time whether or not he'd escape or not, right? At that point in time, the Dark Troopers were outside the door. They weren't necessarily 100% sure. So I mean, maybe after this, where they're about to leave, everyone agrees in that they won't share the story. Like everyone is like an ally. They can then do the transfer. Like that would make sense. But I feel like because at that point in time, with Moff Gideon alive, and you weren't necessarily sure, he can counter that story if you said, that there was no combat trial. I mean, I felt like, to a certain extent, it could make sense. It's more like coup, right? You need everyone in on the coup. If anyone's opposing it, you can't have that story then.
Was Boba and Fennec in the room? Oh, they were, and they were. I'm sure none of them would have had the issue, right?
Yeah, Boba wasn't there, was he? I think.
Fennec no, he was on the ship. They were on their own thing.
The Slave One, is it Slave One?
I don't remember the name of the ship.
Yeah, Boba was in Slave One. Yeah, he was outside.
Okay. What a dark name for a ship.
But the ladies were all in there. Yeah.
It's a good name for a bounty hunter ship.
Yeah, true. I always have speaking of which, I have a problem with Boba's ship. It makes no sense to me. Like functionally, it's weird.
It doesn't, but it's cool.
I mean, the man spends most of his time lying down when he's landing or when he's taking off. And I don't know. It's all right.
I think even some people if you saw when a few of them when Fennec, the Mando, Cara was inside the holding area of the ship of Slave One.
Yeah.
You could see a little bit of how it kind of functions, where they had a gyro kind of spinning around them, right?
I was wondering about that.
Keep them straight, so that they kind of explained it how that worked. But definitely, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense where it all.
It's not very functional in terms of all the extra mechanisms you need to put in there.
Yeah.
It just looks cool. It's amazing.
Yeah. Speaking of ships, have you noticed that Din's Razor Crest kind of resembles the carriers that the clones used in the Clone Wars? I forgot what the ship's called.
The LAAT?
Let me confirm.
Yeah, the aerial.
Now that you mention it, I didn't really notice at first.
LAT?
LAAT.
Oh, LAAT?
I believe that's the ship you're talking about.
Yes, it is.
Favorite Clone War ships, but you've only seen them predominantly in the TIE Striker in Rogue One, where it's mostly done in aerial, like in kind of under the clouds, not necessarily in space.
Oh yeah,
they do fly in space. You see them, I think.
No, they do. It goes in space. It's just there's no point because they're carriers of men.
Yeah.
Right,
the little ships. Yeah.
So we'll talk about one last thing and then we'll move on. But my favorite ship from the Clone Wars were the Y-Wings. I loved it because I played Battlefront 2 on my PS2 and I loved using it to bomb down separatist ships. They took a lot out of the HP, and it was just really fun. You just drop big white bombs.
The Y-wings with the extra armor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those look cool.
I never enjoyed playing the TIE fighters. They were too fast.
And I'm not a big, I don't know Bo-Katan that well, but I'm not sure that wouldn't be consistent with her character to spin a story just to gain power. Would she be the type?
No.
I think...
But it bothers me that she's okay with just taking it freely from a child. Oh, maybe that's why it's okay, because Sabine wasn't even of age, right? Or was she? I'm gonna check Sabine's age.
Okay, Sabine didn't strike me as a child either. Ezra felt younger than she.
Sabine's 16. Maybe that's why she was okay with taking it from her.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough time that passed, and there's enough unexplored territory for them to be able to explain it. And just like off the top of my head, I could see maybe, and this is just me, like storyboarding in my head. It's technically possible. Well, there's a bunch of possibilities. One possibility could be that when she accepted it, maybe because they knew that she attained it without earning it, that she didn't command the same respect, or she didn't get the allegiance of Mandalore as we would have thought would have happened at the end of Rebels, because it never really showed what happened after, right?
Yeah.
And maybe one way they could spin it, and there's probably a whole bunch of other ways they could spin it, because there's still room to write the story, is that after that experience, she realized that she had to earn it legit, right? So maybe that time, there will need to be some sort of story in season 3 where she will have to end up earning it legitimately, because she didn't get the recognition in the first after the end of Rebels.
I actually just thought of something. When they basically kicked out Darth Maul, she united all of Mandalore against him. So technically, that could have been their trial. And if he was basically out of the picture, technically she won. How is she going to chase him down for a combat, right? Trial of combat. So
she was able to. They did show the reunification of Mandalore.
They won. So they won. That's why he got kicked out, because Ahsoka called in some reinforcements from clones, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, regardless, they won. So I guess that's how they could spin it.
Yeah. So, but that's the point I'm trying to make. They have room to spin. I'm sure the fans are going to complain, because
we already are.
They are. Okay, so they are complaining. It is something that's hard to miss if you watch both series. I mean, they're writers. They have writers' rooms. They're going to find a way that makes sense in universe. Maybe they set it up to build up towards season 3 or maybe even 4.
Right.
Speaking of, like a little short between the seasons just to show that storyline, right? That means I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that.
Another cash cow. Is Ezra dead? I don't remember.
I don't think we know.
He left with Thrawn, I believe.
He left with Thrawn?
At the end of Rebels, yeah.
Where? Oh, he got captured. I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but my understanding is that he basically left with Thrawn at the very end of Rebels, and that was the last we've heard of him. Mm-hmm. It was after a bunch of I don't remember exactly why.
Oh, he called a bunch of whales to help their planet, and then basically took him and Thrawn with them somewhere undisclosed.
Something like that.
They did bring up Thrawn in the final episode, or the second last episode, which leads me to believe that they are going to bring in Ezra at some point. I mean, there's no way he's going to die into space to Thrawn, who is by himself already a badass character.
I want to see a live action Ezra. I'm excited.
That makes one of us, because I really dislike Ezra and his stupid lightsaber. Wait, he switched over to a green one,
I kind of liked his lightsaber. I wasn't a fan of Ezra, though.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I think... I would hate to see him in Mandalorian, though, just for the same reason we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Trying to throw everyone inside one series.
You know what? I think we hate him because he was a child, and they made this character to target the younger audiences. So we hate him because he's a brat. He doesn't know anything. He's very annoying, gets them into trouble, right? But I also don't... Well, I think his first lightsaber broke anyway, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. He's got the little blaster on his hilt. I thought that was so dumb.
I kind of liked it, actually. It was quirky.
That's the word. It's quirky.
His kind of personality, I think.
I guess.
He's up and tumble, and then he comes, he patches his own stuff. I felt like that lightsaber was really like, I feel like a lightsaber is supposed to show who you kind of are, right?
Yeah.
And that shows his personality, that he's rough and tumble. He puts things together on his own. He's kind of like a tinkerer. It's pretty cool. I like it too.
How about the idea that he has to turn off his lightsaber to shoot it?
It shoots a blade.
No, he has to turn it off to shoot the laser. To actually shoot the hilt gun. What do you call it? Anyway, I just feel like it's just more dangerous for anyone using it, because if you're most likely going to be fighting someone else with lightsaber skills, and they're probably just going to deflect it back at you, right?
I could see some creative uses for it.
Yeah, you could like swing it around, turn it off, and then shoot 2 shots, and then turn it back on, and then you play ping pong. It's pretty cool.
I think it's quirky. I kind of like it. It's very Ezra-ish, though I'm not a big fan of Ezra.
You say that with so much disdain. Me too. So, Boba.
I love the fact that they brought back the clone actor. I forget his name.
Oh yeah, it's Tamora Morrison. Yeah, Tamora Morrison.
Yeah. They all look very similar to each other somehow.
That's why they're clones.
In real life, man. Anyway, like I love how the way he fights with the staff was very similar to Donnie Yen. Chirrut, yes. I love how he fights with the staff, but you can see it's much more savage. Like you can really feel the impact on the helmets. But I think one thing in particular that Patrick hates is
Boba Fett got Boba Fat. No, and it's not to fat shame him or anything, but it's a bounty hunter who probably doesn't have an easy life. We see him, I guess it was on Tatooine we see him, right? He's living, he's like out there, maybe not scavenging, but I'm guessing that bounty hunters don't eat well. They probably have to, live from day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just really big. So every time he would fight, every side angle, I would just see his gut, and I could not help unsee it after the first strike of the staff. So that bothered me. But otherwise, it was pretty awesome.
I thought it was pretty funny. I just kind of seemed like it was like Thor and Avengers, right? It's like if you have Fat Thor, you got Fat Boba.
It wouldn't have been so bad if they didn't try to hide it, because they try to hide it with like this black drape over his tummy, right? But then you can kind of see it, and you can. But I don't know. It didn't bother me as much. I thought it made sense. He's obviously going to get old, right? Maybe he's going to get out of shape.
But it's true. We do see the clones again in Rebels when they're really old. Right?
Yeah,
and some of them have grown fat.
I think that's just the lifestyle, because they're not in the army anymore. There's no point.
Yeah.
Like Rex, like Captain Rex is pretty big.
Yeah.
Oh, he got pretty fat. Yeah.
They all did. But again, it's probably more the lifestyle rather than their age. Let's not fat shame old people.
Maybe get your podcast canceled.
Maybe they have to eat like a fatty diet, right?
Yeah. But when we see Rex, he was also in the desert. What could they have been eating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rations.
Bantha.
Rations. MREs.
Bantha meat. Boba. I actually never enjoyed his character. See, I grew up with the VHS tapes of the original trilogy at my grandpa's house. And then the Phantom Menace was the first movie I saw in the theaters. But even then, whenever I saw Boba or even Jango, it never really, I just thought it was okay. I thought the jetpack was cool, but he didn't really do much with it. Whereas in the Clone Wars, you see the Mandalorians and you see how they fight, and it's just amazing, right? But I gotta say, when they brought in Boba and he was fighting with his own suit of armor, I was so impressed. It was way beyond anything that we've ever seen before in the series. I particularly appreciated his knee rockets, and I'm like, that was cool. And I feel like they might have ripped that off from Iron Man with his shoulder rockets too, but it wasn't exactly the same, and I thought it was great. I thought it was cool how they have a rocket on their back, but I was like, maybe they could use a bit more, and they put in more. They put it in his knees, and I thought it was sick.
Mm-hmm. It was a business. Bad joke.
Well, I mean, for the way I think with Boba and how his, I guess, weaponry works, a lot of it was more shrouded in lore. I think you don't really necessarily see a lot of him in action a lot of the times. So I think where they were able to actually depict how he actually fought, or how his weaponry was used, especially when they lean over like with the scope, and then launching the rocket off his jetpack. Like like a lot of times you saw it and didn't make any sense. But
it still doesn't.
after depicting it in, I guess, in canon now, it becomes a little bit more also fan service, I think. But it also shows you a little bit more of how he fights and his fighting style. So I think it was pretty cool in terms of being able to depict that all on screen to make it seem feasible or how he actually works, right? So I think it was a good choice of using these different types of armaments and showing it off. It was good. A, fan service, B, it works.
I was actually also wondering why it was still armed. Like, you know, it's past ownership like twice now. How has no one used the rocket or the missiles in his knees, right? And you can argue only he knew about it or had like the codes to like unleash it or whatever. I mean, to fire them off. I was wondering about that. Also, if you're running around with a rocket on your back, aren't you worried about a random shot that might blow you up? I mean, functionally, it doesn't make sense, right? Unless it's a Beskar rocket.
You have to arm it first before launching it.
Oh, that makes sense. What do you guys think about the Dark Troopers, eh?
It was interesting. I mean, that's not my first go-to. It felt like they were just kind of... It's like, oh, okay. I mean, as I said, like, I was going in with a blank slate. When they did show it, I was kind of like, huh, this is curious.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it fit into the storyline. It worked for what they wanted to tell. It made sense to that extent, but, you know, it felt a little awkward because, you know, you don't necessarily think droids, but when the way they explained it, where they took out the human element of, say, the troopers, then I was like, okay, I mean, I'm on board with their explanation.
You know, it just means that they're going back to the separatist droids.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't find them that scary. They were slow-moving juggernauts. They were hard to take out. So I could see how they're intimidating from that point of view. But having seen a whole bunch of droids in the Clone Wars, that's it. Like, I'd be more scared of a BX droid from the Clone Wars than I would be of these Dark Troopers.
That was those guys were insane. You take off their head and they're still going, right? Yeah, and then even the super battle droids, their armor was supposed to be super thick too. So I don't think it would really compare, especially since this one's lacking a lot of plating. I feel like what would have made them special was, remember in the beginning that they were going to pay Din with Beskar? And that led me to believe, because they already took over Mandalore, right? They should have like a big surplus in like Beskar hidden away somewhere. I was thinking that maybe they made their Dark Troopers of Beskar, and I thought that would have been a lot more menacing. Imagine like an army of like Beskar troopers fighting Luke. It wouldn't be so easy, would it? But as you can see, you know, when he was fighting Din, he used his Beskar spear against the Moff Gideon's Darksaber, and his spear actually started to glow red, meaning it probably means that Beskar is not totally impervious to like lightsabers. If he held it there a bit longer, I'm sure it would have broke too. But still, it would have been a challenge for, like, let's say Luke to fight a Dark Trooper of Beskar.
I think it was a pretty cool depiction of Beskar. Because I don't think up to now, or up through Mandalorian, there wasn't necessarily something that could counteract a lightsaber.
How about the vibro blades? I don't remember.
Sorry, what?
There were minimal amount of materials, I think, in the world of Star Wars that would counter, like could hold up to a blade, right? Like a lightsaber blade. So, I mean, it was nice to actually see something that was like, oh, like the Jedi lightsaber isn't the almighty item. There is something that can prevent or at least withstand it at least for a lot longer, right?
They also kind of made it in the, what was it, Force Awakens, with that one trooper with like that electric baton thing. He fought head to head with Finn. So it's not the only one, and I don't think that was made of Beskar. I mean, if it was, that'd be a waste.
Or whatever, like electricity kind of thing, right?
Yeah. It looked like a big taser.
I mean, but it's like, to a certain extent, I think it's nice to have that kind of fresh air. There's some sort of material that can hold up to lightsabers. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Right.
I did like that. Actually, I just looked up vibro blades, and they would not have been able to hold up against sabers. I was actually pleasantly surprised that it was being used that way. And I think it's a good addition to the universe, as you said.
When did they use vibroblades?
I don't know. I don't know why it's at the back of my head. Maybe it's just Star Wars games I've been playing.
Oh, Jango Fett had it hidden in his gauntlets. Okay. So, what do you guys think about Grogu? Like, who do you think he's a clone? Do you think he was someone's child, aka the only other two species in existence that we know of, Yoda and Yaddle?
They mentioned in the show that it was only Yoda and Grogu, right? Because we
No.
do know about Yaddle.
They didn't bring it up in the show. They didn't bring up Yaddle in the show, but she exists.
Because I think they did mention in the show, and it could be just the way I'm remembering, that the only two of their species that was known was Yoda and Grogu. But we know that Yaddle does exist.
I think it was Ahsoka. Ahsoka referenced it, saying that she's known others of his kind, but only like one other or something like that.
But
I think that's what you're remembering, maybe.
But she would have known that Yaddle existed. She was.
I don't think so.
In the prequel movies, sitting on the council.
Yeah, when was that? Which movie? Because it depends. Because Yaddle also loses her life in the book. Was it Shadow Prison? Something like that. Anyway, she loses her life to save Anakin at one point, and Anakin was still relatively young. So I don't think he would have had a Padawan then. So it's very likely that she died before meeting Ahsoka. Also, the temple is a big place. I don't think she would have met her.
Okay, but you would think that people would know who's on the council, seeing that it's the council.
Right. Yeah, that too, I suppose.
I'm Googling it, and there's an article, why Ahsoka doesn't mention Yaddle. So that probably was the case in the show.
She died before meeting her. Like, do you think he's using it to clone Sidious into, like, Snoke, or do you think they're just trying to, like, bring Sidious back to life by infusing midichlorians? Oh, M count. That's another thing I wanted to bring up. They're trying to shoehorn back in the M count because it's been ignored since the first movie.
I mean, it's mentioned in one of the canonical movies, so it's not a bad thing that they mention it.
Only one. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's nice that they bring it back, though, right?
Yeah, and even then, when they mentioned it, Master Yoda was mentioned in reference to that. Anakin having a higher count than Yoda.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so I guess Grogu being of the same species, I guess it's an appropriate to bring M counts in. Right.
Do you think they're using him to bring back Sidious? Do you think maybe Snoke has some of his blood inside?
Actually, I didn't think of it that way. I was assuming that they were testing on, seeing that we saw a whole bunch of test subjects, they were trying to maybe make force-sensitive troopers. But it's all speculation at this point. I have no idea.
Yeah, it is. I feel like maybe this is like a continued project back from when Darth Vader was trying to make Inquisitors, or like train Inquisitors. And then they just kept going with it.
But the Inquisitors were found, right? They were just force-sensitive people. They weren't genetically modified or anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were just found. But you can't say that, after like Star Wars Force Unleashed with Starkiller. I know that's not technically canon, but that wasn't the first time they genetically engineered a Jedi or like a force-sensitive being, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, it wouldn't be the last time they would try either.
Yeah, so you think that they're trying to create Snoke with his blood?
Yeah. What else would they try?
Yeah, in that episode where they infiltrated that base, they did show, and they played that recording with the doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there was that like shot that reminded me of Independence Day, where they had this blown inside the bat kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean that also showed a little bit, or reference, I felt like, to Rise of Skywalker, was it? When they went into that area where they found like Palpatine-ish kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those clones, Snoke clones.
Yeah, all those clones, and then you find out it's like trying to revive Palpatine to a certain extent or something.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe that's could be a foreshadowing of what's to come. I mean, it made sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't doubt they're trying to make force-sensitive troopers too. That'll be kind of interesting.
So that would mean that Moff Gideon is working under the influence of Palpatine. Maybe in
that wouldn't be too hard to imagine. Or Thrawn. Would Thrawn outrank Gideon?
I would think so.
Yeah. In the novelization, I think it was Aftermath, they talked about how there was a project where one of Sidious's clones was a younger version of him, obviously, but wasn't force sensitive and was one of the rejects they left on Jakku. That was one of the places where apparently Sidious had their research and cloning centers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were using, let's say, Grogu's blood to try to like make clones for him to go into. They also talk about it in Now Legends novel. I forgot what it was. It was the one with Darth Plagueis. Oh, that was probably the name of the book, Darth Plagueis. They talked about how Darth Plagueis was knew how to achieve immortality, but Sidious only knew of the method up to the point of essence transfer, which Plagueis looked down on and said that's not real immortality. You're just moving your senses into another body. And it's pretty dark because they actually go into how Sidious manages to kill Plagueis, and because Plagueis was essentially immortal, Sidious just had to keep destroying his body over and over again until Plagueis' being, his essence, just lost consciousness and just gave up and just left. It was nuts. But then that was also before Sidious could figure out true immortality, which is why he's still doing research, which makes sense if he's still trying to do something with Grogu's blood, let's say. So let's just end off this podcast with one last topic. Where do you think season 3 is going to take us? And do you think it's going to be run at the same time as the Book of Boba, or do you think it'll be like after? Is there going to be cameos? What's going to happen to Din? What do you guys think?
I thought that was going to end. I didn't know there was, I was thinking, what else are you going to write for season 3 unless, he goes and finds Grogu again or something, right? I feel like the whole story of The Mandalorian was Din and the child, or with Grogu. Right. Now it's kind of like he lost half of the story. It's like, well, now what? I mean, I'm happy with just following like the Book of Boba, right? I felt like a good ending to a certain extent, and then just launch all these other titles. Right.
I think I would appreciate it ending now as well. It was a good ending, but apparently we are expecting the series return in 2022 after the Book of Boba Fett, which is interesting. So, but there's a way that they can keep going that will make things interesting for me, at least. Like up until now, every episode was kind of almost standalone because it was its own adventure. But if they do continue season 3, I feel like Din might end up playing some role in taking over, taking back Mandalore from the Empire. And I think that would be interesting to see if he would be forced to work with Bo-Katan, and then maybe even finishing the series with a trial and potentially losing, right? I think that would be interesting. But you know what? It's Disney. They're probably just trying to recreate a Marvel universe and have everyone cross over into each series just to milk it as much as possible.
Well, they've been doing it before The Mandalorian, all the crossovers. Like you saw Ahsoka go from Clone Wars to Rebels. We saw other characters also cross-pollinating. I had assumed that there would be a season 3 without reading. Now you're confirming it. And I just assumed that given that they left the dark saber unresolved, and they ended it with that question, that was going to be the natural progression. Will it end in a trial? I don't know. But it's called Mandalorian. We are exploring the Mandalorians in ways we haven't really explored them before. It seems to be a bit different than what we've seen in the Clone Wars and other series. And it seems that the views that I forget what's the Mandalorian, Din was his name?
Yeah, Din.
Yeah. The views that Din was holding and the way he was behaving was not necessarily consistent with what we've seen in the other in the Mandalorians we've seen in other series, right? So there is a lot more room to explore. Is he an offshoot cult? Are there different philosophies within Mandalorian culture? And went out? There's so much room to develop. I really don't mind that they lost Grogu, and I'm kind of happy that they did. And I think, and I would love just to explore the character of Din and his entry into the greater world of Mandalore.
Why don't you talk about that a bit more? Why are you happy that Grogu's gone?
I don't know. As much as I've liked him in the first season, where he was cute and everything, the second season he started getting a bit on my nerve at times. Like when he was at the back of the Razor Crest and Din is trying to get him to wire things, and he's just not listening, or
he's a child, man.
He's a child, but he seems to understand what he should and should not do, and he's not a helpless child. He's able, like for example, the eggs. He knew how to open the container. He knew how to close it as if he didn't take any. He knew how to hide them in his sleeves and fight when no one was looking. Right? There is a certain level of understanding, autonomy, and intentionality behind his actions, which I have a harder time to attribute to a child, like a pure baby. He was more like a toddler who's being naughty and knew the consequences of things and was just being bad.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting too much of my nephews into him. But yeah, I don't mind. I love my nephews, and I don't want to see them gone. But Grogu, I don't mind not seeing him in season 3.
Okay, let's just make sure they don't watch this podcast. Yeah, what you said was important, because we do see in Rebels and even Clone Wars, there were two factions on Mandalore. There were the people who were learning, who tried to keep the old tradition, which is Death Watch, and trying to, like, you know, take back Mandalore and make it great again. And then you have the other faction where under the Mandalorian Duchess, right? So there was two. There was one was like more democratic and let's be civil, and the other one was more like war, battle, honor, right? Mm-hmm. So then there were already two factions. So you're completely right. Like, cause Bo-Katan and Din, they're from two separate factions, so that's why they don't see eye to eye. If I remember correctly, according to the comics, Din is actually one of the true Mandalorians. So any other closing thoughts, guys, before we end the podcast?
I guess just on what you were saying, I would seeing that there are different cultures, different philosophies within the Mandalorian culture. I think it would make for a great show just to explore and to expand on these things. And another, and who I would love to see return in season 3 would be the Armorer. We didn't see much of her. She didn't.
We don't even know if she's dead. I doubt she's dead. Yes.
Yeah, I would love to see her come back.
Because Mando needs some new equipment.
knee rockets.
I think, yes. I think just to add on that, it's not easy to have a whole planet dedicated to one or even two cultures in particular. Like, you see other planets like Coruscant, but the fact that Mandalore was able to unite under like one culture in particular for a while, and then suddenly split off into two, I thought that was impressive. You can go a long way in terms of the politics and that and everything. I know I wanted to close off, but I also want to talk about, what did you guys think of Bo-Katan's boob armor? So this is a controversial topic online, apparently. People had the issue with the chest plate actually conforming around the shape of her bosom. I don't know what you guys thought of it or even noticed it.
I have to Google boob armor because I don't know what you're talking about.
I find it correct. Like, how else are you gonna not...
protect...
I mean, to a certain extent, like, I mean, it makes sense that, you know, that it's their personal armor, right? It would conform to their body or whenever they made it. I mean, I feel like it's accurate to it, right? And like, it's atomically correct. It's a personal piece that should be made to conform to your body to make it work. I mean, look at Boba right now. Like, yeah, he got big and he let himself go. I mean, but his armor technically was made to fit him when he was fit.
It's fit, yeah.
Right? So it makes sense. I mean, I don't get what the whole controversy is. It makes sense. It fits in, and I agree that it should be something that's fitted. And Mandalorians are a race that, you know, that are good at fighting, right? And they are great at armory. So each piece is made to each person. So I mean, it makes sense. And
it bothers me that it's actually canonically correct. It's exactly the same as how they drew them in the Clone Wars. They didn't make a big issue then, right?
Actually, and then pictures of both the Clone Wars and the Mandalorian, and some images of the Clone Wars seem relatively flatter than the Mandalorian. So I guess I could
but you can still see a bulge.
I could see that it's a bit more developed and pronounced in the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Which I guess is normal because you're doing live productions versus just animation, so it doesn't bother me. So I'm with you guys from that point of view. What was the controversy exactly? Is it
they're saying they're sexualizing a person by emphasizing her breast, but it's really dumb because if you look at it, it's not even emphasizing it that much. It's just like it almost looks flat-ish, right? It's not emphasizing each boob necessarily. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at Din's armor, that's also emphasizing his boobs. It might be flat, but you can see the engravings, the square around his chest, right? So I don't see what this double standard is about. If they were to put that plate onto her, I'm sure she would be suffering a lot because that looks very flat and tight against the chest. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's not even the first time, like, historically speaking, when they made armor, like, for soldiers, they had things that exaggerated pieces that people thought were attractive. They had cod pieces over the men's groins. They definitely had breastplates that emphasized a woman's bosom, but you know, it makes sense. You don't exactly want to get hurt. It protects that area. And you know what? There's people are going to argue that there's no functional aspect to it. It is. And they think that's a weakness, but no. Like these armorers, like you said before, they're skilled. If they're going to make armor that works, obviously they'll make the whole piece itself of equal density. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's really dope.
You want it to be functional and comfortable in combat and daily usage.
It'll be like fighting with a corset. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you going to fight when you can't breathe, right? I don't know. People are really dumb.
But we do know that George Lucas said that there's no bras in space, so.
That's what the chest plate is for. All right, and with that insightful note, we'll end off the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me to join this conversation, Louis.
No problem. It was fun. If you guys are interested, we'll do this again for the Book of Boba.
And for season 3.
And season 3, yes, which will happen.
You know what I'm looking forward to? The High Republic.
The High Republic? Oh, is that a new series coming out?
Or anything High Republic that they're coming out with.
When is that coming out?
I can't wait for the next Star Wars movie, though. Rogue Squadron?
Oh, yeah, because you're a fighter aficionado too, right?
Yeah, love the Star Wars starships. I love how they look ridiculous, and you don't ever really figure out how they can actually exist and fly, but...
Whoa. You're not ridiculous. The only ridiculous one is Slave One, okay?
John, they need to make a Scum and Villainy show just for you.
Hope you guys enjoyed our chat. Let us know down in the comments what your most favorite part of The Mandalorian is. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And while I have your attention, why not check out some of my other content, like my most recent short story audiobook, The Call. Peace!
See ya.